Hello and welcome to Times of India. I am Sanjeev Singh. The union budget has been presented and everybody wants to know how does this budget affect the common man, that's you and me, and how it's going to affect our own purses. To discuss more about this, we have a big panel today. We've got Preeti Sharma of EY joining us, Sanjeev Shankaran who tracks political economy for the Times of India, and we also have our special guest Rohit Saran, executive editor of the Times of India. Rohit, I'd like to start with you first. Your thoughts overall on the budget.
Well, it was there was a debate before this budget speech started whether it's the last budget or second last budget. After this speech, it's clearly the last budget. Government may pull up a surprise. So, seen as the last budget of NDA, it was a very typical of large budget. You know, about 20% of the speech in Hindi directly addressed to the potential voter. Less to the taxpayer. You know, in India, the number of voters are, I think, about 25 times the number of taxpayers. So, if a budget is addressing the voters, it will seem like being unfair to taxpayers and very fair to. In India, you can't be fair to the taxpayers and voters at the same time, given the disproportional size of voters vis-a-vis taxpayers. So that was very clear from the speech, both the language used as well as the medium. Coming to the personal tax, so therefore, I think, which Preeti and Sanjeev will explain, it's not too surprising, though it's sad for most of the personal taxpayers, income taxpayers, that to be fair to the voter, he has not been that fair to the personal taxpayer. Okay. Which I think the experts will elaborate why this may be the case. At least that's today's analysis suggests. For example, there's hardly any gainer. There are very few gainers as far as income tax debates are concerned, or any kinds of exemptions are concerned. There are more losers, if you can. I think finance ministers always argue that budget should not be seen only from personal tax angle. There are larger economic issues. There's a huge spending on education and health and infrastructure, all of which benefits the taxpayer, should benefit the taxpayer. So, but without trying to justify Mr. Jaitley, I think we can straightway go to our experts and say, really, who has gained how much?
Okay, so in that trend, we'll go to our first slide. What is stored for the individual taxpayer? So we also have Preeti, special guest joining us. Preeti, in the newsroom, we overheard a lot of people saying that, the finance minister has given us something in the front pocket and taken it from the back pocket. How true is that?
I think I agree with Rohit. It is a kind of balancing act that you want a popular budget because it's the last budget, but then you have to take care of physical prudence. So there's a need for balance, and we've seen that balancing because the way the tax rates, there's got many changes for the individual taxpayers. There are few changes, but at the same time, certain exemptions were taken back. So it's like that you're eventually not gaining much on the personal tax side. So if we talk about the income tax rate, which are applicable to individuals, there's no change in the slab rate. We've seen the trend in last couple of years that there's some changes introduced every year, and the last year again there was a change in the slab rate. But this year the minimum taxable income remains intact. The tax rates remain intact, but then the education cess, which was there 3% last year, this is now replaced with a healthcare cess and increased to 4%.
So, and sorry, Preeti, so the last year the big change was lowest tax rate
introduced, yes,
coming down from 10% to 5%.
5%, right.
So that, so very guess, right. So now it's 3, 20 and 30. Right. Sorry, 5, 20 and 30.
So the slab rate is from 3 lakhs to 5 lakhs, 5%, 5 to 10 is 20%, and above 10 is 30%. Okay. Plus education cess and surcharge. So no change in the slab, but education cess has increased. So that's what has happened on the rate front.
But standard deduction is supposed to be a big lollipop, right? Yes. So I don't know how big of a lollipop is that. Maybe you can tell us.
Okay.
No, standard deduction.
What is
this is supposed to be a big.
So this is basically for the salaried class, and we're debating that all professionals are getting deduction for the expenses what they incur, but there's no flat deduction for salaried employees. So we were expecting that. So good news is that everyone, all salaried employee, will get flat 40% deduction.
So on my salary, maybe Sanjay, correct, how does it come? Where does 40,000 come?
40,000.
40,000. Where does it come, Sanjay? Maybe we can write. So suppose what? 1 lakh monthly income,
Right.
taxable income. Where will this 40,000 come into my tax statement?
So if if 1 lakh is your salary income, we
okay.
need to per month we need to calculate the total taxable income under the head salary for annual salary income, which will be, let's take a
let's
number.
just give an example.
Yeah,
Preeti.
yeah,
Imagine income
of 1 lakh.
Yeah, income of 1 lakh.
A month.
Okay,
1 lakh
1 lakh
per month. Yeah.
per month.
Right.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, how will you calculate this?
So that means
Would you
your
like to write
income. Yeah.
this? Yeah.
So that means your
Would you like to explain to you?
Yeah.
annual income
Will be 12.
will be
12. Yes.
Yeah.
12 lakhs.
Right.
So this is the income, salary income.
Yes.
You're right.
Yes.
And when we receive salary
Roughly,
income,
how much is taxable? That's what.
Right. This is what is taxable, but then
Okay.
there's certain exemptions available like medical, transport,
Right.
LTC, HRA, and so on. So assuming after all those exemptions, which are around 2 lakh,
Okay.
your income under the head salary is 10 lakh.
10.
Okay. So this is your taxable income.
Under the head salary.
Salary.
Now there is a standard deduction what is available for 40,000.
Oh, so this will be like, so straight away your salary will become 9,60,000.
Nine-
Okay.
nine-
Okay. At this
960.
stage itself.
Right.
Okay.
So
Okay.
your tax will be calculated on 960.
Okay.
Preeti, as we understand, to give this deduction, they've actually taken away something that we already
Yes.
had.
So that's a googly actually.
That's a googly. Okay.
So as I mentioned, from 12 lakh you move down to 10 lakh, and there's certain more deductions and exemptions available. So the two very popular exemptions. One is on account of conveyance, so which is again a flat 1,600 per month, what you can consider as exempt. And second is the medical reimbursement.
Okay.
So which is up to 15,000 per annum. If the employer is reimbursing your medical expenses, then that is again not taxable. So what they've done, they've taken that back. So that
So
is
annually
no more
you have
available.
lost 15,000.
No,
15,000.
15,000.
And
for
plus 16 into
medical.
12.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
This is gone
Right, and then 19,200
of this.
for conveyance.
So
Yeah.
34,200 is gone.
Right,
From this. It's gone from here.
Yeah.
right.
And
So-
in return, you're getting 40,000.
Yeah, in return
So
you're getting
effectively, you're getting 5,800 more.
yes.
So,
This is
yeah.
actually the gain.
So this figure changes.
So yes,
Your 10 lakh becomes
Yes.
Would be higher.
yes, or
will be high.
Yes, or let me add back here 34.
Right.
20.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So
yeah.
you are
Oh, yeah,
again,
that's
Yeah. You're
you are again back to 9 point.
9.94. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yes.
So effectively, the gain is 5,800.
So why don't you write it down?
Right,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So you gained this and you lost this.
you lost that.
So maybe we can say gain loss here,
yeah,
Sanjeev,
yeah,
if it's possible.
Should I?
Yeah.
This?
Yeah. Come, Preeti, we come this side. So
So-
Sanjeev, you can write.
Yeah. So we gain
Gain X and loss Y.
Ah.
Then we clearly know. So then,
gain 40,000. And
and this is per annum gains.
Yes,
yeah,
So, yeah.
and loss is 34,400,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
No, sorry, 200.
200.
Now, Preeti, this with the loss will be it will be the same. The gain and loss will be the same no matter my income level.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now, the other aspect, what we need to see our actual actual tax bill after all these changes. We are saying that there's some gain, 5,800 per annum for the employees, but then you have to pay 1% extra education cess.
Yeah.
Oh.
So loss number 2.
Yes.
That's loss 1 and that's
Yeah,
loss
that's
2.
good one. This is loss 1.
Loss 1. And then we have loss 2.
2 is the
That's just 1%.
1% additional
on
so,
the taxable income. 1%.
on your tax amount.
Yes, on
Tax
taxable in a tax amount.
tax
yeah.
amount.
That's okay.
So if we see the overall gain after accounting all these three changes, someone who is in the 5% bracket, so assuming someone has income of around 3,25,000 to start with, so he's gaining around 290 rupees. Per annum.
Annually.
Per annum.
Per annum. So yeah, that's not even 20 rupees a month.
Yes.
So it's
And which will
Less than 1
gradually
rupee a day.
reduce.
yeah.
Can we write that?
Yeah, so even the best case gainer is gaining 1 rupee a day.
Less than 1 rupee.
Less than
This
1
is
rupee.
if the salary is 1 lakh a month.
No.
No.
3.25 a
So
year.
it's 25,000 a month, roughly.
So
Okay.
290 is the maximum gain, which will reduce
Per annum.
gradually.
Per
Per
annum.
annum.
Yeah,
Yes.
So it's less than 1 rupee a day.
Yeah, less than 1 rupee a day.
Which will reduce gradually.
Which will reduce
At the
gradually.
moment someone is earning more than
Say
12 lakh,
3 lakhs
12 lakh,
a month or something like
1
that.
lakh a month.
Yeah.
1 lakh a month, you are actually paying extra as compared to last year.
Oh.
Then you are a net loser.
Net loser. And
And then, but only to be fair, I guess the senior citizens will gain from this
Yes,
big time.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yes. So this is for the taxpayers who are
Yeah,
below
and-
60 years old.
Yeah.
Because there's no other change.
Hmm.
But yes, for senior citizens, there
There's
are
a separate-
various
no,
changes
just
in
separate
tax
this thing,
rates. Yes.
But I think less than 1 rupee is and then even at the lowest slab.
at the lowest slab.
Can we go to our next slide now?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So going back to our next slide is senior citizens, as Rohit was saying, medical insurance, tax-free interest, and tax break on medical expenses. Preeti, if you
Let's
can
put it in 3.
decode this for us, please.
Medical.
So,
Medical insurance.
if you buy a health insurance and pay premium for the
Okay.
health insurance, there is a deduction available under Section 80D. So, if the health insurance is taken for you and your family and no one is senior citizen, so the maximum amount what can be deducted from your annual salary is 25,000. But
Okay.
if the covered person is a senior citizen, it can increase to 30,000. What they have changed is that from this year onwards, if the insurance premium is paid for a senior citizen, the deduction can be claimed up to rupees 50,000. So that limit has revised.
Okay.
So sorry. So if I have, see, it could be any of us,
Right.
and I'm insuring, and in that family floater there is a senior citizen.
Yes.
Then this goes up to.
Then it goes.
So
up.
I don't have to be a senior citizen to benefit from them.
Right.
I can benefit if I have a parent
Yes.
or in-laws.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that limit has increased to 50,000.
Okay.
So that-
By the way, as an aside, I mean, I think that since we use the word, you can only insure your parents, not your in-laws.
Yes.
That's a strange anomaly in the system. But anyway, right. Okay, I get it.
And no changes in the section to cover in-laws yet.
Yeah, I know. This is a very unfair.
What about tax-free interest?
Yes. So other thing is, if we see, there is a section 80 TTA, and if you're receiving interest on your saving bank account,
TP.
TTA. Under this section, last year, if there is an interest on your saving bank account, there is a deduction available up to 10,000 rupees on that. What they have done this year, they've introduced a new section for senior citizens, which is 80 TTB.
Okay, this is the new one.
Yes.
TTB.
TTB is, and this is for the senior citizens, and where the deduction is allowed up to 50,000 rupees. So if senior citizen is earning interest up to 50,000 rupees, not taxable. And the good thing is it is interest from your saving bank account, as well as if you have a fixed deposit, that interest is also covered in this section. So this is the additional benefit.
Okay, before you go further, Preeti, we'll just take some comments that are coming in. Some people have some questions also. A couple of them, including Anuj Chauhan, says, what is the impact on GST slab? And Shiv Narayan is asking, middle class walon ka kya hua? So, I mean, these are the two basic things. Is there anything on GST that we can talk about?
GST actually, because now GST or indirect tax in GST is specifically out of the budget. So
Okay.
if there is any change, and they're actually making gradual change in the GST regime. So in case there's a change that is outside the budget.
To answer his question, as Preeti said, changes today have no impact on GST.
On GST, yes.
Okay.
Second, for the middle class, we have discussed the maximum you can gain is 270 or 90 rupees per annum because of these changes.
Yeah.
But for senior citizens, yes, there are all these exemptions are introduced, which help them to reduce their tax bill.
Yeah. So that is the big change.
Right.
You have to be above 62.
Yes.
And what about the tax break on medical expenses?
This is another deduction available, which is under section 80 DDB. So if the senior citizen is incurring some medical expenses on critical illness, so you can claim that as a deduction, and that up to 1 lakh rupees is what is the limit here.
Okay.
So till last year, if someone was more than 60 years old, then the deduction available was 60,000, and if someone was more than 80 years old, deduction available was 80,000.
Okay.
So they have increased it to 1 lakh. So that's a change for senior citizens.
Okay, great. So now we can go back to our.
This is I think.
Is there anything left in this?
No, nothing left of this. The other big change on long-term capital gains. I think this is something that has attracted a lot of attention during the budget speech as well as after that. So can you just take us through the system before today's change, Preeti? What was the earlier position?
Right. So before today, in fact, till yesterday.
Yeah, I'll just say earlier position.
Earlier position was that if you have listed equity and listed securities,
right,
and if you hold that for more than 12 months, then it is a long-term capital gain, and which is not taxable because you're paying the security transaction tax at the time of purchase and sale of such securities.
Yeah.
So the gain what you have earned, that was exempt from tax.
Right.
If someone is holding it for less than 12 months and then selling it in the market, it qualified as a short-term capital gain, which is taxable as 15%.
That was the earlier position.
It was, yeah. So
now the budget change.
So there is a, if I can just interrupt you guys, there is a request from Mr. Vicky Bhim Raja that please have a conversation in Hindi if possible. So maybe
you
can
can switch to Hindi too. Sure. So today's change. Budget.
तो आज जो चेंज आया है काफी इसके ऊपर चर्चा रही है और एक्सपेक्टेड भी था कि ये इंट्रोड्यूस होगा कि लॉन्ग टर्म कैपिटल गेन टैक्स गेन के ऊपर टैक्स लगेगा. So what is introduced today that if you have a long-term capital gain from listed securities, that is taxable at the rate of 10%.
10%.
Yes, but some relaxation provided. It says, अगर आपका जो gain है, if it is less than 1 lakh rupees, not taxable. But if it is more than 1 lakh rupees, so any amount which is more than 1 lakh rupees, you pay 10% tax.
मतलब आपका गेन 1 लाख से ज्यादा होना चाहिए.
तो आपको 10% टैक्स पे करना पड़ेगा. अगर आपका गेन 1,50,000 रुपए है, तो आप 50,000 के ऊपर 10% टैक्स पे करेंगे.
Okay.
ठीक.
First, I just want to talk about the grandfathering. What is it?
Yeah, before I'll just take a little bit. Shrey Jain says he has a question. Should I sell my long-term equity shares and repurchase as I want to continue in the market? Benny Thomas says, how do businesses gain from this budget? Shantanu Munshi says, good budget, poor and weaker section will benefit. No populist short-term political gimmicks, although it's an election year. And there is a Mr. Jatendra Kumar Pradhan who wants to know who are we? I mean, us taking a class. We are from the Times of India. Preeti Sharma has come from EY to explain how personal tax is going to play out, personal finance is playing out. And at the moment, we're discussing pay tax on long-term equity investments. Preeti, please carry on.
Yeah. So what I was saying that although it is a good kind of setback that you have planned your long-term investment and all of a sudden there's a change in the law and you have to pay 10% tax, but there is a grandfathering or relaxation provided in this budget And as per that, if any transaction done till yesterday, no tax on that.
Right.
But then in the next year, if you make any transaction, whatever gain you have made till yesterday, that's exempt.
Okay. Okay.
Any increment from today onwards, if you sell that security in the coming year, on that you have to pay tax. But again, anything which is more than 1 lakh rupees.
I think that answers
Yeah.
the question of Mr. Benny, who wanted to know if he should sell his gain and then get in. Anything that you made till yesterday, your gains till yesterday are not going to be taxed.
One more question coming from Mr. Sadanand. He says it talks about school fee and tuition fee. Do they come under the Section 80D Act?
School fee and tuition fee that comes under Section 80C, which again part of the overall cap of 1,50,000 rupees, which you can adjust from or deduct from your taxable income. So tuition fee is a part of 80C, not
Okay.
80D.
Okay.
School fees. Okay, but 1 lakh rupees, 1,50,000
Cap.
is the cap.
Yes.
So
Which
in fact-
includes
yeah.
school fee, your
Insurance,
provident, fund
insurance,
contributions, life insurance, and so on.
In fact, Saurabh Jaswal also wants to know the effects of the budget on the education sector, if it may be as in the same thing. So,
Has anything been changed in ATC? Have the
No,
caps been
no,
changed?
no. So no tax impact on the individual because of that. But in the
Okay.
education sector, yes, the finance minister has announced changes in how. Yes.
It doesn't affect an individual.
no.
so and what about higher education in that sense? Is there anything that
No.
tax break for that
so
in this year.
no change in anything?
No, nothing.
Okay, Lalit Vora wants to know, is there any business benefit for businesses? Although we're discussing personal finance, Mr. Lalit Vora wants to know, is there any benefit for businesses? And Roshan Chaudhary wants to know if there's anything he should be concerned about as far as the real estate goes, real estate investment.
Okay, let's take the real estate. There is a change, isn't it, over here? Real estate?
So there's no change in the real estate taxation, but there's a change in Section 54EC where you claim the where if there is a long-term capital gain on the real estate and you invest that in the specified securities, then there is an exemption available under Section 54EC. What has changed is that earlier, if you're investing in the specified securities under 54EC, there was a minimum holding period of 3 years what was required.
Right.
This
Right.
year, they have increased it to 5 years.
Okay. So holding period goes up from 3 to 5.
Yes.
Goes up. Oops, sorry. 3 to
Aisha
5 years.
Siddiqui also has a question about traveling and housing tax. If I plan to buy a flat, when and how much tax do I have to pay?
So if you are buying an apartment or a flat and you're taking a housing loan on that apartment, there is some tax breaks available on the housing loan. The interest, what you're paying on the loan, that is eligible for deduction when you're calculating the income under the head house property. But the principal repayment, that is again deductible under Section 80C, but in the overall cap of 1,50,000 rupees.
Okay, great. Going back to another question, I'm just taking some questions. Shantanu Singh says education cess has been increased from 3 to 4%. Is that true?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Saurabh Jaswal has a question. Any effect on entertainment and food? Krish wants to know how will it affect fruits and vegetable markets, for example, onions, and how will it affect the effect it will have on petrol and diesel and agriculture?
So if you're talking about the pricing and which is influenced by the indirect tax, so the budget is not addressing GST, so that's again a separate matter.
Okay. And entertainment, so basically all that is covered under GST, is it?
Yeah, most of the entertainment taxes.
Anything new for NRIs in the budget? Rajan Nanda says, is there anything new for NRIs in the
Did
budget?
you notice
Yeah,
anything,
I-
Preeti?
We are getting a lot more questions. Abhishek Rao wants to know.
Not in the budget speed, but we need to go through the
Yeah,
finance
so-
bill and then see
yeah,
if there's
the-
any level in the finance
We'll
bill.
just take some questions, and if you want, you can see if you want to answer them. Abhishek Rao says, what is more beneficial now for investment? And are mutual funds taxable? Ghanshyam Patel says, how will it affect mutual fund gain? Sachin Jagdale, standard deduction of 40k. Does this replace Mediclaim and transport allowance, or is it addition to the existing exemptions? Raghavendra says, does the budget have any impact on NRI accounts and the investments? And one interesting question from Shubhra Baumik, how will it affect the Bitcoin income? Please clarify.
So let's first talk about the security
Okay,
market. So
okay.
many questions, I'll try to cover
Okay.
with them. So listed mutual funds and listed securities and shares, we've discussed that that is taxable. But please, no need to rush. You don't need to go immediately and sell your securities, because whatever happened from today onwards, that will remain for the entire year. So you can take a conscious call where you want to dispose of your investments to earn gain or not, but you don't need to do it today or tomorrow.
Preeti, just one doubt over here.
Yes.
Now, if you have an open-ended mutual fund, equity-oriented mutual fund, which is not listed, you still have this, until yesterday you had that 1 year holding period for
Yes.
capital gains. Now, what happened? So do unlisted equity-oriented funds also get covered under this?
No, so it is unlisted equity-oriented funds. Anyways, the gain is, if it's a long-term capital gain, that's there's no special exemption. So it is only the listed securities which are covered
Okay.
in this change.
A lot of people want to know what cryptocurrency.
So there is an announcement in the speech that they don't consider as a legal tender. So let's see what are the implications.
So bitcoins are not legal tender. In fact, the finance minister said
Yes.
that explicitly in the budget speech. So it's probably not, and he said they would discourage it.
Yes.
So if you have made gains over here,
Okay.
it's not a very, it's, I don't think you'll get away with it.
A couple of more questions. Marine Matthews wants to know, if someone's income is 4 to 5 lakhs yearly, how much tax do they have to pay now? And Aisha wants to know, if you compare this to the previous year's budget, what is your take on it?
Let's take the 4 to 5 lakh
Yes.
first, okay? Income annual 4 to 5 lakhs. Okay, this is annual. Now, approximately what would be?
So if we are talking about this is the income of a salaried employee tax.
Let's make it 5 lakhs to make it easier.
Right. So if it is an income of salaried employee, so the additional standard deduction available, but you forego the exemptions on medical and conveyance, still, and then you pay additional 1% cess, health cess. Post that, you may save some money. On 5 lakh rupees, maybe the saving in the range of 180 to 200
Rupees a year.
rupees per annum.
Okay. So your saving now will be less than 1 rupee a day.
Yes.
Less than. Okay, so after the new system, well, there is some saving. It is less than 1 rupee a day.
A day.
That's the.
Right.
And if you're.
If you're not a salaried class, as an individual, you are a self-employed or a professional, so no standard deduction available, and there's no benefit on account of that, and you're paying extra 1% as education says, so your tax bill will go up to that extent.
Okay, Anil Kuri has a question. Transport allowance, is it exempt or not? Alka Rani says, if I purchase a piece of land, how much tax do I have to pay? And what about electricity, gas and phone bills? Weber has another question. If I have some LT gains of rupees 2 lakhs now, and if I take it in 50,000 rupees in different months, am I still eligible to pay 10% overall on the 2 lakhs?
Can you repeat that
Yeah.
question? It says LTA gain. I will be saying that I have a long-term gain for 2 lakhs now, and if I take it 50,000 in different months, still I'm eligible to pay 10% on overall 2 lakhs. So this change in the law is effective April 2018 onwards. So if the gain you have already made yesterday, you don't need to pay any tax on that. But if you intend to sell it in future, whatever is the notional gain till yesterday, You don't need to pay tax. Whatever is the increment from today onwards, that's what is taxable.
Okay. So, if for your 2 lakh as of today, no tax. After today, any gain that you make, that's where you pay the tax.
Anything about property? Is there any change in property?
No, and there's no tax if she buys property.
Right.
Okay.
No tax for buying property.
No additional tax. You mean?
No
Okay.
tax when you buy. The tax is when you dispose of. But
Okay.
when you're buying and taking loans, so there are different tax breaks what are available.
That is, your EMI or something
Yes.
like that. No. Okay, no tax for buying property.
But one thing which I want to add here, that if it is your second or third house and you already have a self-occupied house, then a locked house may be taxable, so which is considered as deemed to be occupied property, and you pay tax on the notional rent. If you rent it out, then you pay tax on the actual rent. But if you lock the second house, keep it vacant, then you have to pay tax on notional tax.
Okay.
No change in that, so
No
that will
change.
continue.
Mahesh Joshi has a question: is standard deduction benefit available to retired people, pensioners?
Yes, that is available.
Yes.
Also, Marine Matthews who had asked that question about 5 lakh annual income for the salaried class. We said that you save about 1 rupee a day, is
A
it?
little less than that.
So, Marine, that's your answer. You save about 1 rupee a day. Sanjeev, there is a question for you. What is the Kaushik Mukherjee is asking? What is the point for fellowship to bright engineering students at IIT and IISc?
Well, that's part of the. You know that fellowship comes with a condition that you also have to teach in some institutes. So the government's saying that we will encourage people. We will actually support them to go beyond, do a PhD, but we want something out of it for society. So that's the. In a way, it benefits everyone. As an individual, if I do get a fellowship from the government, I get to study further at their expense, but the state also gets something out by making me teach.
Okay, so I think we're running short of time. Preeti, in the end, if you would just like to, Preeti and Sanjeev, if you can just sum up what we've done so far and the key takeaways that you think are important people should know about this budget.
Now, Preeti, let's start with standard deduction.
Right.
That was for an individual. For all salaried individuals, that was the biggest change today.
Yeah, that's the biggest change where we can think of that will reduce the tax bill. So that's
Marginally.
Yes, marginally.
But because you have a cess, it limits the change, right?
Yes.
And as you said, if your income is more than rupees 1 lakh a month, you will actually end up paying more tax because of the cess.
Maybe, yeah. Yes.
In all probability,
In all probability. Yes.
that's what will happen.
Yes.
And the other big change was we'll just use the acronym, long-term capital gains on listed equity and equity-oriented mutual funds. Right? So, I mean, I won't write the mutual funds, but that's
Right.
for the
Right.
Anything on
that's a big
NRIs?
change actually.
10%. For holding period of more than one.
For more than 1 year. So if it is less than 1 year, the taxability will remain same. So it's 15%, which was taxed last year as well, and it will continue to be taxed at the same rate this year as well.
Okay, so this is the big change.
I'll again trouble you with a couple of more questions. People want to know about any benefits for NRIs, if there is anything.
And not in the budget speech, but yes, we need to
Could
go
be
through
there in the fine print.
Yeah,
Could be.
in the
So,
memorandum and fine print.
We're still
there is
waiting
some changes.
for
Some clarity on that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. John Joseph says any update on public sector banks? What is the future of public sector banks?
That I think only the finance minister will be able to answer. But before the budget, they had committed to recapitalizing public sector bank by rupees 80,000 crore through bonds. So the government will continue to own public sector banks, and they are infusing additional capital so that they can start lending once again.
Okay. Yamini Gupta has a question. What about EPF changes? Government will pay 12% of wages for new employees for first 3 years. Is there any way we can explain this? She needs some more clarity.
That's what is announced in the budget.
Speech.
That in the budget speech, that the new employee who will join the provident fund for the coming 3 years, the government will pay 12% of the 12% of the salary as a contribution, additional contribution. We still need to see the fine prints and the changes in the EP effect to see how
Okay.
that will be affected.
Sorin has a question. If you're buying a new property, then according to our answer, we don't have to pay stamp duty and GST. No,
Those are the incidental taxes. So the stamp duty is what you need to pay at the time of registration. Here we're talking about the personal tax, and then you don't need to pay any personal tax.
So you don't need to pay anything extra apart from what you normally have to pay.
Yes.
Okay, and Kashif Nawaz has a question: is there anything for students who are studying abroad? Is there any sort of change?
There is no change. There is already an existing provision, Section 80E, where if you take a education loan, the interest is deductible under that section. No change in this year.
Also, again, Mr. Kannagiri wants to know, what about agricultural loan? If I have 5 acres and I take an agricultural loan, is it interest free? It'll be tough to answer, I know.
No, but there is a subsidy given by the government for agricultural loans. Banks give the subsidy.
Rajaram Desai is asking us, can we throw some light on mutual fund distribution tax?
This is actually a new change where dividend which is distributed by equity-linked mutual funds that comes under the ambit of dividend distribution tax. Here, the mutual fund is required to pay this tax, which is a kind of indirect levy. It's the fund which will pay dividend distribution tax when the dividend is distributed to the mutual fund holders, to the person who is holding the mutual funds. And this actual dividend, when it is received by the investor, that's not taxable in his hand.
Okay, so they deduct the tax before paying the dividend.
It is paid by the mutual fund, similar to a dividend distribution tax. When the company pays the dividend to the shareholders, company is required to pay dividend distribution tax. Here when the mutual fund is paying dividend to the investor, the mutual fund will pay that tax. When the investor will receive that dividend, that's actually tax free.
Not taxed in the hands of the
Yes.
Okay, not taxed in the hands of the investor.
Yes.
So it's safe to assume the mutual fund will deduct it from. I mean, essentially it's an indirect way of taxing
Right.
you.
It's an indirect.
Siddharth Roy wants to know any tax benefit changes in second home loan.
There's no additional benefit announced in this budget.
And Jyoti Prakash is asking any EPF withdrawal benefits.
There's no EPF withdrawal benefit, but one interesting change introduced for national pension system. So if you see, if an employee as a salaried taxpayer, if you're investing in the national pension system, there was a change introduced that you are eligible to withdraw up to 40% from the corpus for the specified purposes, and that 40% is not taxable. So if you see the relevant section, there was some loopholes in the section, and when you read it, it seems that if a self-employed person has invested in NPS and when he is withdrawing it, it is taxable in his hand. So there is a clarificatory amendment in the law this year, and if you're a self-employed investing in NPS, you withdraw up to 40% for the specified purpose and you don't need to pay tax.
Then no tax. Okay, Shivesh Tiwari, any increase in salary for private employees? I think we discussed that 1 rupee if it's for 5 lakhs. Pradnesh Naik is asking, what about infrastructure bonds over 1 year? And Shruti Roy Chaudhary has a question again, tax for locked house. Can you please explain that again?
Okay, well, infrastructure bond over 1 year, was there any change, Preeti?
If it is listed, then obviously the rules what we are discussing will apply. If it is not listed, no change. Now on the second
But
house,
it's a bond, so it's not equity oriented. Will it apply?
I need to check in. Fact, maybe I'll respond to the question after the discussion.
Okay, locked house.
Yes.
This is the, what is the position?
So if you have one house and it is self-occupied house, you don't need to pay any tax.
Right.
If you have taken any housing loan on that house, the interest is actually deductible,
Yeah.
and you can claim that and you can adjust that with your other sources of income as well from your salary and so
Right.
on. But there is a ceiling that up to 2 lakh is what you can adjust.
Right.
Now, if you purchase a second house and you don't rent it out,
Okay.
either you are using it or it is locked.
Right.
It is considered as deemed to be let out.
Okay. Deemed. Okay. And you pay tax on that.
On the notional rent.
Deemed to be let out. Okay.
So better to let it out, earn some income and pay tax.
Okay.
Okay.
On that note, I'd just like to say thank you very much for taking so much time out, Preeti and Sanjeev, for doing all that lovely handwriting on that whiteboard for us. So that's it from us. Even though we try to focus on personal finance, thank you so much for asking so many questions. We also don't have the full details of the budget with us. We would love to answer your questions, but on the whole, as Rohit had said that you can't please the taxpayer and the entire public in one go. So I guess this time, because we have elections next year, it is a sort of election budget for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. But thank you so much for watching, and do stay tuned into the Times of India for live